my party-going friends tipped me off that in a certain warehouse in Bavaria, there was a surplus PX cigarettes. So I got in touch with our man in Munich, Sam Haber, incidentally, you know the name?
You're right.
Sam was the director there. I got in touch with him, gave him the information. I said, so-and-so, such and such an officer, fill in these forms. And we got the cigarettes at 3 cents a piece, which was cheaper than buying them in America and sending them.
Sure.
These are the things that no individual could have done. I couldn't have done it if I was alone. When I worked before JDC came in, where I could hang my head on, I could finagle some, but nothing of this magnitude. For one thing, I had a beautiful home there, which I finally found for myself. I think it was Max Schmeling's home in Dallas. But I couldn't hold parties in that home and Max Helvarg's home. But when I opened the JDC personnel house,
right.
This is the difference, you see.
Right.
So that's why I say personal relationships are one thing. They're good. I'm not denigrating. But rabbis, or for that matter, generals, I fought for this house. I fought a 2-star general. We got it because I became assimilated rank. That's after I took over jail. Because of my position as director for that, I became a 1-star general. My associate became a colonel, and somehow or other their system was that one star plus 2 colonels or something had preference over a 2-star. But it was whatever it was. But we couldn't do it without these stars. Mm-hmm. And it was carried over. The reason I'm a little heated about it, I'm not really.
No,
I want to clear you up on that.
That's exactly the point.
See, there's always self-serving. I am afraid that by retelling you this in context of trying to tell you how much the chaplains did, I may be sounding like I'm self-serving. It doesn't interest me.
No, I understand that. No,
rabbis.
But trying to put it in the proper perspective, that's it.
I would say that they helped. They helped tremendously where they were mentioned. Most of them were mentioned, 1 or 2 goof-offs. They were worried. They helped tremendously, but some helped a hell of a lot more. They're all equal, but some more equal.
Right. Now, you're talking about Rabbi Friedman.
Rabbi Friedman shipped out, I don't know, books. There were books, Jewish books. There were a lot of others. So, I remember we were talking, so we said, fine. It's like with the UN. Lose Nasa Miller. This is, you understand Yiddish. That's, what are they going to do to him? The worst that they can do, they'll strip him of his captaincy. You see, we didn't look upon that as important. We had more important work and involvement. In this connection, rabbis might have thought, he wants to come back, hey, Daddy, what did you do in the war? I was a lieutenant colonel, or a colonel, rather than say I was a captain or lieutenant. This is the difference.
Well, there were some that perhaps felt that way, but there were others that felt the other way.
Majority felt the other way. I'm saying majority.
Well, that's why I want to put everything, to understand.
This is it. By and by, all the Jewish chaplains that I came in contact with, these were intimate, were helpful to the degree possible. And I'm not saying it as self-serving for the JDC, because as I try to explain to you, without the JDC, it's like here. Here, Max Helvarg is just like anybody else. But Max Helvarg, an executive of the National Israel Bonds, is a big important man. Why? Because a lot of people can get something from me. I can give them some COVID or whatever it is. But Max Helvarg, and it's the same Max Helvarg.
Right.
The same with the rabbi. whatever his name is, what's that? Whatever his name is, chaplain, was still the same. Chaplains were a dime a dozen, in the sense that they didn't carry any weight. But if they did it for not Jews, but Klaus, through the JDC or on behalf of the JDC or on behalf of Ort or anybody, then they carried more weight. When I came to the Inspector General, who called me in, wanted to know what happened to a doctor on my staff, whom we shipped out the night before because we knew he was going to be picked up for manipulating. And I said, he's gone, and I produced papers. You know, this was cloak and dagger stuff, which is silly, really. And then he said to me, you know, Mr. Helvarg, and I say it with all due respect, he says to me, you're giving me cheeky answers. I say, Colonel, I have to write a report to my office about this interview. Shall I include this comment by you or not? And he shut up. What the hell would he have said if he say, hey, Helvarg, you're a cheeky bastard? That's it. And this is what I'm saying about working with it. That doesn't mean that in many cases we didn't have a team, we didn't have a representative, or we had a stupid representative. Just because we're Jewish doesn't mean we all wore clothes. We had some stupid representative or no representative. And if a rabbi had the initiative, he got things done. And in his own way, he did a tremendous job. As I said, there are two or three who, how shall I describe, they were little guys, and they were over their depth. But they talked.
Can you please tell me who they were? I mean, it's
I'll shut it off.
Okay.
Huh? This, I think it's off.
Yeah, it's on now. Okay.
We had occupation marks.
This is explaining the...
Yeah, the money.
The money.
Right. We had occupation marks. This is over and above the watch dealing, which was peculiar to Berlin. That was an operation where colonels stood in line, literally, getting a receipt from a PFC who was in an office in the building, watch so-and-so, because the Russians had occupation marks. And what happened was that we had the plates. And there was a Colonel Bernstein, finance officer, who recommended, or at least he was blamed. We were trying to win their goodwill, and we gave them the plates to print occupation marks. So you understand what happened.
Sure.
The only difference, and the Russians we got paid every month. That was a law of the U.S. Army. Right into the trenches, they had to pay. The Russians hadn't been paid in 3 years. They got all this pay in occupation marks, but the Russians weren't going to let themselves get fouled out. There was one condition. They could cash back into rubles 1 month's salary. The others were paper. So what the hell did they care if they paid the equivalent of $1,400 or $1,800 for a Mickey Mouse watch, as an example? It was not $1,500. Mickey Mouse was only $700. You see? But they called kamni. Kamni are stones. What do they call in the watch? No, they have jewels. Jewels. All they wanted is kamni. Jewels. They would take it and open it up and count a little. You'd think that it was really the Tsarina's jewels. There were even cases where our boys would open the back and take nail polish, and marks like jewels. Of course, inevitably, when you opened it, the whole thing was warm, and the whole thing got gummed up, and he lost it. But this is the way you got a lot of money. Either you got that way, or in one way or another, you had to acquire the marks. You traded, you gambled, whatnot. The Americans, however, suddenly found out the boo-boo. We paid off, I believe, in 1945, August or something, the total outgoing money paid to all American personnel in Berlin was about $2 million. The post office, APO, during the same period, wrote money orders to be sent back to America for $6 or $7 million. When they found that out, they went crazy. You had to pay $500, the 5,000 marks for somebody to stand in line all night so that when the post office opened, he could write checks. Or if you bribed the clerks you wrote, you got your money orders. The thing is that when they found out, they instituted a new system, sometimes towards the end of 1945. It was a very simple one. Every soldier got a paybook. Whenever he received legitimate pounds, it was entered as in. Whenever he sent out any, it was entered as out. The balance was all your assets. If you had any more when you tried to claim that you had, or you tried to send, let's say you tried to send money, they looked at your book. That was it. Now, this was the point. Some of them were hungry, and they did all sorts of things.
Who's some of them?
Some Americans.
Right.
Among them were a couple of chaplains. Nothing wrong with that. They're human beings.
Yeah, but this.
But by and large, they were good.
Yeah, but this again did not interfere with, or did it interfere with their handling of the Jews?
A man who went to that extreme to enrich himself,
Yeah.
I would say, just a generalization,
Fine.
it interfered with the potential he had to help the Jews. Because he was busy accumulating or scheming. On the other hand, the gentleman we spoke about before, he did an excellent job, and then he thought to make a killing the legitimate way. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we always kid each other. I'm very friendly with him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is about the only one. I think they helped a great deal. I think that certainly I didn't know of any Jewish chaplain who was actually antagonistic to the Jews, who didn't try. Look, it was a very simple thing. You weren't a Jew inside of you if you could stand by and do nothing. And the beauty of the experience was that we were needed. All the psychiatrists will tell you. You're appreciated. I say this. If all my children can say about, the old man did something good, that's it. But you couldn't seek a job like that if you were fortunate enough to be at the right place at the right time when you were needed, and if you had a little sechel, you accomplished a little more.
Now, were you involved? You mentioned Breslau, Shubo, Friedman, and
Abramowitz.
was there anything else that you wanted to say about Friedman in terms of what you did with him? Were you involved with the trains? Can we be specific?
Well, which ones are you talking about? Did he tell you anything?
Well, we didn't get to it yet.
Yeah.
But he mentioned the fact that he was accompanying refugees.
All right. We had out of Berlin. Berlin is an island within the Russian zone. To get out
Right.
of Berlin, you had to do one of three ways: fly, train, or convoy buses. We had what were known as the invalid convoys from camps. They would go under escort properly identified. They would go through the Autobahn to Munich or Frankfurt.
In a convoy.
In a convoy, identified under UNRWA auspices and so on. Some people went. Some of them went by train. There was a train between Frankfurt. That was the nearest spot.
The ultimate destination of these people? The ultimate destination?
No. The destination was to get them out of Berlin.
I see. Okay.
To get them out of this island, because there they could move around to other countries. They were freer to go. And there was a third way, to fly. To fly, you had to go either through the American or through the British Army. The British, forget it. We came to the parting of their ways 2 days after I got into Berlin. They began stealing. I was in the intelligence picking up the blacklist names and the whitelist names, which were our friends and they were double-crossing us in getting there. We had the same lists. We'd give them, then they'd take them away. So it was the Americans. With the Americans, I had an arrangement. They came to me and said that we will take any Russian officer who is willing to talk. We will fly him out. As an aside, I learned something very beautiful. There are Jewish crooks and there are Jewish murderers, but Jewish informers are very few and far. Most of them, you know that. We had a system whereby any officer who wanted to defect would go into Schlachtensee in a camp, he would be swallowed up, and then he would be told by me, because this was such a delicate, they were always afraid that you have these choices. You can go either with the convoy or you can go with and fly over and be free. Convoy, if he were caught, he was shot. There was no question. I think it's to the credit of our Jewish morals. I know of only one officer in the dozens and dozens. And incidentally, the officer who could fly had to be at least a major and higher, otherwise he didn't know a goddamn thing. Because that was part of my job when I was still in the Army. Only one that I know of. And he was talked into flying and talking to the Americans because one of my associates in the Army, a Jewish fellow from Washington, it was his cousin, and he talked to him, he says, don't worry, I'll see you. So we had convoys, and we would disguise them as sick people. And invariably somebody would go along. This was an official train. It was so-called a SEAL train. They couldn't get out. And somebody would go along invariably when we had hot merchandise to support the train officer, the convoy officer, because if the Russians questioned or something, what did he know? He would go through the forms. They wanted to search or something, if it was permitted. Somebody would be there. If he knew there was hot merchandise, he'd raise holy hell. And knowing the Russian attitude, that they always saluted if you shouted louder, it was just like the Germans. If you had a stempel, you could do anything. And better when you didn't speak Russian. So, Herb went periodically. But actually, again, we had to hang them. This was not smuggling in the open. This was not in the dead of night, you know.
Right.
This was having a guy like Herb. I went once or twice, you know, just to see what it was like. Some of my staff.
Was it particularly important that a chaplain be involved in that?
A chaplain lent more weight. A chaplain, what the hell, the officer who spoke English, and there was invariably, and was a smart guy, and probably from the Secret Service, you know, or intelligence. A chaplain, he had a little more defense, and the chaplain could always say, this man is so sick, he can die, you know, I want to be there. Of course, these things. But he did, Herb, as far as Herb is concerned, I'm as friendly with some others, although Herb is a very dear personal friend. But Herb is one of these. He was one of the outstanding.
Now, what about, was there anything else, other experiences you remember with Rabbi
chaplains?
With Rabbi Friedman?
Rabbi Friedman? So far, and everybody was going to write a book. I said, I'll write my reports, and unfortunately, the JDC archives are fantastic, but there are too many censors. They still haven't gotten over the idea that we had the most dramatic story as JDC. And here, when somebody started writing, there was another book written on JDC a few years ago, and it sounded like a bookkeeping report. You know, just said they sent so much money and so much money. They were always afraid of acknowledging
the work that they did.
The work that they did, and the whole drama was in what the joint did.
One never gets the picture that you're portraying of the joint.
Well, I was tempted once to write. As a matter of fact, I had some friends that one of them is dead, who even began taping. Then I said, toss it away, because it's all in there. It's all in the JDC archives. Complete reports.
Well, I'll get to them. There's no problem.
I hope you do. You'll have to. You're not in a rush, I suppose. You have a lot of time.
Right.
Go into the JDC archives, get reports, the reports that were written to Paris to Joe Schwartz from the, not the usual, they used to drown everybody in paper, but reports of specific happenings. They were either anything that's marked personal. If you don't see, if you see it's not a bookkeeping report, he spent so much and he got so. I had as an example, this is, the joint used to pay $5,000. Is this going?
Yeah.
For a million, used to pay in Munich.
$5,000
for a million marks. This went on for a few months. And then, when we established, put into business a couple of our Jews, I was in a position. I didn't have to clear cigarettes with anybody. Cigarettes were more expensive in Munich, and gold was more expensive in Berlin. So it became a simple thing. You had combinations of three. One guy sat in Munich, one guy sat in Berlin, purchasing, and the guy in between was the courier. And he would drive 2-3 times a week. It wasn't long before you could make 1 million, 2 million marks. But if the courier had to pick up cigarettes, gold he had to dispose, there was another way. But cigarettes he had to come to me. And I'd give him the cigarettes, provided the joint was cut in on the profit. So before we realized, it cost the joint in Berlin, it cost, let's see, what the hell was it? About 200 cartons?
200 cartons?
200, no, 1 million couldn't be true. It cost, I'm trying to think, from 5,000, it came down to about $700. The equivalent of $7, the cost of cigarettes for 1 million marks. So the next step was the logical thing. I'd acquire sacks of that, and then I pass it down the line to the other officers. Now, all these things, it's in the records, but for the JDC to admit to the world that we black market, that's crazy. I say it's crazy not to admit it, because nobody gave a damn. When the Treasury Department and Treasury Department agent appeared in Berlin, I knew he was coming. I'd gotten word, and he came in, sat like you said, and threw 2 $20 gold pieces. Says, take a look at it, Mr. Ho. I look, I ain't more than $20. I say, what? He says, one of them is phony. I say, no gold? He says, oh no. It is counterfeit. I say, so what do you want me to do? I didn't count it. He says, I want you to believe me. I want to find out the craftsman. I will take him off your hands. I will get him admitted to the United States and guarantee him a job in the Mint. This is how fine. And they made gold pieces, and gold pieces were very expensive because Jews, traded all things for gold.
Right.
He made that gold piece by hand. A treasury agent could tell. And everybody made money on it. The craftsman made money. The dealer who got the craftsman, who got rid of it, made money. And they still had the same amount of gold, and it was worth as much on the outside. These are the things that kept us going. And more important, not to the American JDC next, or to the chaplains, with all due respect to what they contributed. It is to the initiative of the leaders within the groups. There were 2 types of Jews. I know literally, or if I don't know, I run into them. I travel a great deal. Jews, thousands and thousands of Jews. How do I remember them? Simply. It's either because he was so outstanding, that's like a Waffenendeugen, and immediately you made him chief of this and chief of that and purchaser, or it was such a nebuch, a downtrodden one, that you remember him because he's the only one. When I got these sewing machines in Berlin and opened a training shop, or it wasn't there, so we had to do that. And I put in 15 machines. I put those labels on it. 2 days later, I walked in to see what it was. There were 3 guys, or two guys with the machines. There wasn't another machine in Germany. Because these Jews took the machine and went into business for themselves. But these two Nebuchadnezzar, they didn't know any better. They were so thankful. One of them, incidentally, is the tailor here for Harry Rothman. He's got his own bushel plant, his own bushel plant. This is how they were the ones, these leaders, they were fantastic. I couldn't organize, and the Bricha couldn't organize, although they did. The transports in 1947, I believe, we had an influx through Berlin of about 60,000 Jews from Poland, Steki, in less than 50 days. Or maybe it was the other way. It was 50,000. Who organized it? With Russian trucks, Russian officers, fine. I couldn't organize it. The chaplain couldn't organize it. At least not outside. But we had a couple of Bricha guys, and more important, they had the joint behind them. You see? This is what really was the drama and the beauty of that movement. They had their own courts, because one thing every Jew remembered from the cassette, if there was a turncoat Jew or a nasty or a mean Jew, they found it. That's all they lived for.
I noticed in many JDC reports that I looked through already that they did not mention the collaboration between the chaplains and the JDC. Is there any reason for that to your judgment?
My judgment would be, I'll take my own experience. I had no problems. There was no antagonism or competition.
No,
we just took it for granted.
No, but I noticed that the reports of the JDC, which are very helpful because they are so detailed, but why wasn't it mentioned? Is it just because this is the nature of?
No, I think this. We had, while they had waiting, a team of social workers ready to go into Germany the minute the war was over. The bulk of the directors and the bulk of the guys who did things came out of the army. We were there. We were not social workers. We were not social workers, and we were too busy doing to write. And the reason, as I said, unless something outstanding, I expected the chaplain to do what he did if he was doing it, just as I expected myself. So I took it for granted, didn't think it important enough for future historic representation to mention. I was another maverick. I got a new secretary sent from New York, and I had a team, and we used to have meetings, and I didn't have the patience. So I say, write a report. And they would write. So when she came in, I said, take it out on the lawn and burn it. She thought I was kidding her. The next morning I came in, put on a mock, anger, didn't you? So they took it out and burned it. And when she got to know after a week, I said, what are you missing there? Copies are in, social workers, and I admired them for that. They write reports with copies there through the immediate superior. Copies were there. Who the hell wanted reports?
Okay. Now, were you involved in any way with the package programs that the American Jewish Chaplains initiated?
Look, as far as food and packages were concerned, the joint was the rich uncle.
But before the joint became involved in this,
before the joint,
there was a period of time in May of or
April, May
of 1945,
June, July,
right, where the chaplains didn't have the joint.
Where the chaplains were able to make those packages, they did it. Nobody else could do it.
Right.
In Berlin, it wasn't the chaplain. In Berlin, as I said, we got together. I had this goddamn money from the watches.
Right, and so you didn't.
And I said, here is 100,000 to you, until they made contacts with the activists in the community or the Polish Jews when they came in. Because the German Jews, they were older, first of all, and they didn't know, they were too genteel. But except one guy, who ultimately was verschlepped because he was a communist. But no, that's true, where they were. But once the joint got in, this was the power of the joint.
Right, there's no question. I was just
You
simply
see?
talking about the fact that the package program existed
Anyone
beforehand.
if a rabbi had the desire and the drive to do it, all the credit is his. There should be no one else.
Were you ever involved in collecting guns, ammunition, or money to be sent to Palestine?
Not money. Not money. That's another one that has nothing to do with this. I was the representative for the Rechab in gathering guns.
Guns. Well,
Sweden.
can we go into that?
Were you involved with that, with the chaplains in any way?
No. That was a situation where the chaplains, I don't even know one, even Herb,
Who was involved with that?
on a massive scale, because
How could they be on a massive scale? Rabbi Esrig, Eskin
yeah.
was involved in that.
What? How many guns did he say he was involved? I mean, massive. I mean,
No,
wholesale.
No, we're not talking about that. Obviously, he wasn't in position, or neither were any of the other chaplains.
Except the joint, because I had the money.
Okay, well, let's get to that.
And
Though.
I-
When we're